Quebec will soon become the first province in Canada to enforce a vaccine passport. Starting September 1st, people aged 12 and up will have to prove they're vaccinated to get into places like restaurants, gyms, and festivals. They'll do that with a scannable QR code on their phone, like the kinds you get at menus these days. Quebec Premier François Legault says this will allow businesses to stay open during an inevitable fourth wave of COVID, an idea he thinks will catch on.
We'll probably see some other provinces putting in place a vaccine passport, maybe not in provinces that are governed by conservative parties, but in other provinces, I expect that they'll be put in place. With the polls and the information we have, we think that we have the support of the vast majority of Quebecers.
But not everyone is on board. The passport system is already drawing protest from people who say it's highly discriminatory. Christopher Skeete is the parliamentary assistant to Quebec Premier François Legault. He's in Laval. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Skeete. I'd like to start with some of the reaction you've seen to Quebec's announcement that the vaccine passport program is going to be implemented.
Well, I think, it's this pandemic is really tricky. We're seeing a rise in cases, and this is the best way to make sure that we keep our hospitals functioning, that we keep the caseload for our healthcare workers in a controllable manner. And I'm hopeful that it's a way of also protecting our freedoms.
Now, that is actually a criticism that some people have presented, that perhaps implementing a program like this is infringing upon the rights of those who are choosing not to get a vaccine or get vaccinated. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's the opposite. I think this is actually the best way to protect people's freedoms. For instance, essential services will be maintained even for those who don't have a vaccine passport or who haven't received the vaccines. So for us, we're saying if you want to go to high-risk social gatherings with a lot of people and high volumes and closed spaces, for that, we need to be responsible and be smart about how we do that. But for the rest, for essential services and for just being, people are still free to choose what they want to do.
Other governments at other levels are sort of mulling over whether this is the right route for them to go. For those wondering, watching in different provinces outside of Quebec, how exactly is this going to work? Is just you scan a QR code and you can get in? How does it go?
Yeah, so right now we're having actually a pilot project to actually iron out some of those details. The way it's looking like now is that every Quebecer for the past few months who's gotten vaccinated has received a QR code. What we're doing internally is we're developing a reader for that particular QR code that will integrate with verification of the person's ID. And the two pieces of information will confirm that the person is vaccinated and therefore able to participate in high-risk activities.
So that's going to work for the people who got vaccinated in Quebec. But what if someone's coming in from, say, Ontario, or you fully vaccinated Americans are allowed back in the country now for tourism purposes? Say a tourist wants to go to a restaurant. How's that going to work?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we actually are looking into how we can harmonize our process with other provinces like Ontario and our southern neighbors. You're right. Our southern neighbors and Ontarians have received the vaccine, and we're looking to see how we can make sure that on the one side, we're not stifling tourism or hurting the tourist industry, yet at the same time, making sure that we keep our local population safe. So we're still ironing out those details, and part of the pilot project will help us do that. And we'll keep you apprised once we have a little bit more information in that regard.
Would this be easier for your province to implement if there was some sort of national sort of plan here to give every Canadian some sort of QR code or some sort of document that can verify, yes, I've been vaccinated, here are the details? Would that help you in this process if there were a national system here?
Well, it's tempting to think that wall-to-wall solution would be useful, but don't forget, health is a provincial jurisdiction. We're kind of jealous about our jurisdictions in Quebec, and other provinces are as well. I would much rather that the federal government continue to do a good job controlling access on the border than to interfere on our local healthcare policies. What I do hope, though, is that we have a concerted effort and that the provinces continue to work together for a solution that allows us to have interprovincial trade. So I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and I think we can do both, have something that fits us and our needs, while at the same time letting provinces manage their own internal affairs and their expectations of their citizens.
So you don't want to see a national, any sort of national database or anything like that, because you're worried it could interfere with the way you do things in Quebec?
Well, healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction. We've already developed our own solution. So I would hate for us to have to start over just because we're trying to do something that might not fit us, right? So what we're developing fits our needs. Provinces internally are developing things that fit their needs. I would much rather the federal government focus on controlling the access of individuals who are coming within our borders, which is their responsibility. And I think when we do that, our federation works really well.
Have you had any outreach from any other provinces to get any information about how you're sort of planning this and how you plan to execute this to show other jurisdictions of how it might be done?
Well, I know that Prince Edward Island and Ontario are looking at solutions that resemble ours, and we are working on harmonizing our approaches with them. But I mean, discussions are still ongoing. Whether we'll ultimately decide on the same thing still remains to be seen. But of course, we're very sensitive to the fact that, for instance, people who live in the Gatineau area have a very close relationship with those who live in the Ottawa area. So we want to make sure that we have some way of harmonizing our processes. So that fact is not lost on us. So we're looking to do that.
Are there any concerns that the QR code system, that there could be any instances that there could be fraud here, that these vaccine certificates or the passport system, there are ways around it and people could still participate?
Yeah, that's a concern all the time, right? Every law any politician could ever come up with is always going to be subject to those who think that they're smarter than everybody else and who try to contour those rules and regulations. We're confident that with our application, with our QR code and the verification of identification, we should be able to keep Quebecers safe.
Those are all of our questions today. I really want to thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me. And I hope you had a great summer. I'm looking forward to more conversations in the fall.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.